Hey, folks. Welcome to another round of Cloudformation and building out a web-based workload. Just a quick review. I got to turn this audio down. Hold on a sec. Too loud. There we go. Is the background noise okay, or is it too loud on everybody else's end? Review of what we did from last week. We basically created the VPC. So we've got our long VPC name here, and we created a large VPC, so a /16. Within that VPC, we subdivided it into 4 subnets, 2 public and 2 private. We've left ourselves a lot of space. We also left space for future expansion. So if we wanted to move into other availability zones and things like that. So for now, if you look here, we're simply spanning 2 availability zones. So pretty standard deployment, right? We've got our route tables, individual route tables for each of the subnets. So that gives us the ability to control routing. Pretty basic right now. If you're in the private subnets, all of the traffic the default route points to the NAT gateways. So we have one NAT gateway, one NAT gateway, there we go, in each availability zone. So that'll route traffic out. If you're in one of the public subnets, then we're going to talk to the internet gateway. Pretty basic. Okay. So today I really wanted to do 2 things. I created myself a little cheat sheet. So I've got setting up VPC flow logs and setting up endpoints for systems manager. So let's talk about both. Actually, before I do that, here's my cheat sheet for the subnet division. And we've got these 2 availability zones in use. And then we have two spare availability zones. So if we wanted to expand later. So this is the cheat sheet that I'm using for that. Okay, so what are flow logs and what are VPC endpoints? First, flow logs is a logging solution that allows us to monitor all the traffic flowing in and out of the VPC. And we can look at accepted traffic, we can look at rejected traffic, or we could look at all traffic. So the first thing I want to set up today is set up VPC flow logs to route messages to CloudWatch logs, and we're just going to capture all traffic. Flow logs is a really flow logs. There we go. It's a really good troubleshooting tool. So once we get a little further along, we're going to create security groups and potentially network access control lists. And one of the easiest ways to troubleshoot both of those resources is to use flow logs, because it'll very quickly show us rejected traffic, and we can work back from there to see if it's either a security group or a network access control list that's blocking that. So that's why it's important to have that. The other thing we want to set up are VPC endpoints. What you'll find is as you start building this out, the majority of services that we're going to well, actually not in this use case, but the majority of services actually aren't deployable inside a VPC. That means that for, let's say, the EC2 instances that are sitting within our VPC, we would want those to communicate potentially with other services. So we're going to set up Systems Manager to help us manage these EC2 instances. Systems Manager is what I'll call non-VPC aware. So that means that in our example, if we've got an EC2 instance that has to talk to the systems manager for patching, for inventory, if we want to run commands against these EC2 instances, essentially that traffic is flowing out of the VPC onto the Amazon network. With something like a VPC endpoint, we can keep all of that traffic private. So we're going to create VPC endpoints for Systems Manager. There's tons of other services that support VPC endpoints, but I think for now at least, unless I can think of something else later on, for now at least, we'll just set it up for SSM. Okay. When I look at this, we really want a couple things here. We want to write this to CloudWatch logs. Okay. And in order to do that, we need an IAM role that flow logs can assume. Because really what we have here is one service talking to another. We're going to allow flow logs to create log groups, create log streams, and push log data into those components within CloudWatch logs. So we need to give it permissions. So this is actually really the first thing that we're going to set up. Okay, is a role. Once we do that, we can set up the actual CloudWatch log group, and we should have log streaming information going in there at that point. Okay, so that's the first goal. And then when we get to endpoints, we'll come back to this. There's, depending on the service, there's actually a fair amount of work that needs to be done here. So I'm hoping to get through these two things tonight. So let's start with flow logs. Where's PyCharm? There we go. So this is the template that we built out last week. I ripped it down after we were done last week just to save some costs for the NAT instances. No sense, or the NAT gateway, sorry, no instance or no reason to have those running for a week when we really didn't need any of that infrastructure. So I'm going to create a new file here, and we're going to just call this flow logs, and we'll give it a description. And just like we did before, I'm going to just put the placeholder in here, and we'll start with the resources. So as I mentioned, we know that we're going to need a role. Okay, so let's just call it flow log role 0. And we actually have to set some permissions into this flow log. So I think what we'll do is we'll call this flow log policy. Okay, so those are the first two pieces of info that we need. And then I think I'm just going to put all of this in a single file. You might want to separate this into individual files. That's up to you. But I think for demo here, I'll put it all in one. So now I have let's just call it log 0. And I think that's all we need. When we look in the documentation, we may end up having to create some more. But let's just start here at the top. And we're going to create here an Iam Managed Policy. Oops. Okay, so let's go have a look at this, see what we need. So here's the flow log piece. And actually, let's work backwards. Just let's look at what we require in the flow log definition, and then we can figure out what we need to create. So the first thing is, this is where we refer to that role that I mentioned already. This is how we're going to allow the flow log service to write to the CloudWatch logs service. So this is the first thing we need. And last week I kept making spelling mistakes. So I think what we're going to do is actually, sorry, I need the actual flow log, don't I? And I'm not sure, is it EC2 flow log? So the first thing is this, which we don't have yet. Actually, I can do ref this, because I know that's where I'm going to put the permissions. And like we did last week, we're going to use depends on here just to ensure that that role exists before we actually create the flow log configuration. So we'll just save that. The log destination, flow logs actually supports both CloudWatch logs and S3. If I recall, it defaults to, if log destination type is not specified or CloudWatch logs, specify the ARN of the CloudWatch logs group. Okay. So here's log destination type, and it defaults to CloudWatch logs. So we don't need this because we're going to push it into CloudWatch logs. We do need this though. And this for now, we'll do the same thing we did last week. So we're going to add the ARN here. Okay. Mentioned already, we don't need this. You can change the log format, okay, but we're going to leave the default. I call it basically the Apache log style, a single record for each record that we're going to capture. And it's going to tell us, timestamps, source, destination, protocol, destination port, source port, all that great stuff. Just a single line item for each record. The name, log group name, the name of a new or existing CloudWatch log group where EC2 publishes. Specify, do not specify log permission. Log destination. Okay, so see here, it says Alternatively, you can use cloud log group name instead. I'm not completely sure that we need this. Oh yeah, okay, required no. So yeah, we don't care about that. The maximum aggregation interval, the duration flow packets is captured and aggregated into blah, blah, blah. So we can specify 60 seconds or 600 seconds. I think for today, we're going to make this 60 seconds just so we can ensure that it's working. Flow logs also gives us the ability to determine what we want to capture log traffic off of. So we can look at all of the resources in a subnet, specific network interfaces within our environment, or the entire VPC. We tend to put the entire VPC. So this is the first example of where we need a parameter. So I'm going to say, whoops, what did I do there? Try that again. Resource ID, and we're going to refer to VPC ID. And we're going to put that up here. And we'll come back to this. Okay. I don't know if I want to put that as a string, because I think if we put it as a string, there's an opportunity there for a lot of errors, right? You're going to ask somebody to type in that unique identifier for the VPC. I want to say there is a built-in parameter, an AWS provided parameter type that we could use that will give us a drop-down list of all of the VPC IDs if we're going to deploy this through the console. Like last week, we're not going to do that. We're going to use the GitLab CI to do it, but it's still good practice to kind of limit what can be put there. I just can't, off the top of my head, remember what that is. So we'll mark it as to do for now. Resource type and tags. Oh, okay. So there's also a traffic type. So I mentioned earlier on that I want to capture all traffic. Okay. And then tags. I always like to put tags at the end. And like we did last week, I'm not going to type this. I'm just going to grab these. All right, and then fix our odd spacing again. And we'll just call this flow logs. So we need to set all these in parameters. So I think I'll do the same thing. I'll just steal from here. And we did set up an application tag as well. So maybe we'll put that in here. So we'll do this same thing. Oh, step this all back. So let's go like this. I don't know what we called it. I don't recall using that now. So let's do application, and the value is app. Okay, so we'll set up all these, and there's our flow log. Okay, so that's good. And we've got our flow log role defined. We're going to create our log group so we don't have to worry about that right away. Max aggregation. We're going to talk about this. So let's figure out what this is up here. What's the type definition? So what we could do here is we could just do AWS Cloudformation parameter types. There should be a list here somewhere. I think this is where it is. So here we go, AWS specific parameter types. So we can click there. So these are the built-in ones. These are really handy. Here we go. That's going to look for a specific VPC ID. And then you can see down here a list. So I'm going to actually use a list, even though we won't deploy it this way. This would allow, like if you're deploying it in the management console, you get a drop-down list of all of the available VPC IDs. So we're just going to dump that in there. I think that's all we need to do. If we check down here, not a good example. Okay, yeah, so there's our definition, okay? So we're fine. So we've got that set up. That takes care of that we're going to define this. So let's leave this to do for now. Let's get our log, our role set. Okay, so this is going to be type AWS IAM role, and we're going to have to define some properties. So let's do this. Essentially, a role has two components. It has a trust policy and it has a permissions policy. So we have to actually define both. We're going to put this is the permissions policy. We're going to put this in to the managed policy that we already defined. And we're going to put the trust policy in the role itself. And then we're going to refer to the managed policy. So this is essentially saying, allow the VPC flow log service to assume this role. And that's the only service that can actually use this role. So let's set this up. And I always have to look up the exact structure for both of these. I can never remember them. So here's the role. And really what we're looking at in the documentation is this, an assume role policy document. Okay. And I think they give us an example here because, again, I never remember the structure. Yeah, this is what we want right here. Okay. So if we go back, this is what I want. Okay. Version is always 2012 1017, and then we can create our statements. So we know our statements are going to be allow statements, and then we have the actions, and we're going to grab the list of actions from here. So you know what, this isn't going to be perfect, but it'll work. Grab this, and we'll just dump it in here for now. We'll clean it up. There's no way I'm going to remember all of this if I tried to type this from scratch. Right. I'm sure there's a more efficient way to do this. I guess I could have put it into a JSON to YAML converter. And we're going to say resource. In this case, I'm going to tighten this up, I think, after we deploy it. But we're essentially saying here, allow this role, once it's assumed, to perform these actions against all of the CloudWatch log service. And we're saying don't limit it to any specific CloudWatch log group or log stream. Just give it access to everything. We might want to tighten this up. I need to see the ARN that will get created, and then we can work backwards here from this. So that's our role, but I put that in the wrong spot, actually, now that I'm looking at it. This is actually should go up here. This is not the role. This is not the assume role policy document. This is the permissions document. So let's go back and have a look here. And it's going to be policy document. So we'll add the missing pieces later, but it's essentially this. Okay. What we actually want in here is just the assumption, the role assumption piece, which was this. Okay. So the effect is allow. The action is STS assume role. So if you haven't seen this before, what you have to the left of the colon is the service. So in this case, the security token service. And to the right of the colon is the action. Okay, so up here, logs is for CloudWatch logs. And this is the action that we're going to allow this role to perform. Okay, so same idea here. And then we have to define the principal. I don't think that's spelt right. Oh yeah, okay. And we want it to be the service in this case. I'm just going to do the same thing. Grab this. And I want to say the structure of this is actually like this. Okay. Allow the VPC flow log service to assume this role. Okay. We're going to put another depends on in here. And we're going to say the role depends on the policy. And that's important because if we go actually back to the role, there's our assume role document. We're not going to worry about a description. And we want to refer to the managed policy ARNs. So we can do this. And in this case, we're going to refer to the flow log policy 0. So that's why we want the depends on here. We want to make sure that's created before we refer to it. And you know what? For completeness, let's do this. Just so we know later, right? We're going to forget what this is. So we've got that. We've got our description. We've got a list of our policy ARNs. We can set how long we're able to assume this role. We're not going to worry about it. Not going to worry about the path. Not going to worry about a permissions boundary. We're not going to worry about policies. We're going to let Cloudformation generate this name for us. Okay. And then our tags. So just like we did before, grab this. There we go. And we'll just say flow log role. Let's take this off. Okay. Now I know that we're missing something in this managed policy, so let's go back and have a look here. Description. Let's do the same thing. Just keep it the same. Customer managed. Well, we don't really need to say that. Managed policy for flow log IAM role. We're not assigning the policy to a group. We're assigning it to a role, so we don't need that. Again, we're not going to give it a name. We're going to let Cloudformation generate that for us. We don't need the path. We've got the policy document already. We're not going to do this because we're going to actually assign it at the role level. So you can when creating the policy, assign it to a role, or you can have the role associate the managed policy to it. So we're going to go with the latter of those two. If you tried to do both, you would get what Cloudformation calls a circular dependency, and it's going to throw errors at you. Again, not attaching it to users, so we don't need that. I think we're good. Okay. So we've got our policy statement, we've got the role, and we've got the flow log. We still need our CloudWatch log group here. So actually, I want to put this up here. I think it makes more sense. So let's do log group 0. And when you see this, there's very little to do in the log group. Give it a name. Again, we're not going to actually give it a name. We're going to let Cloudformation do that for us, and then set the retention. If you don't set the retention, what happens here is that you will retain your logs indefinitely, which in our environment is no big deal in theory. I always like to set the retention in days, so we're just going to grab this, and we'll say properties. Retention in days, and we're going to refer here to let's just call it retention. No, let's do this. Retention days. And we'll set a default value of, let's say, 30. Keep it for a month. Okay. I was saying that in our environment, this is really no big deal because we're not going to capture that many logs, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're in a really large account with a lot of log data coming back, you do get charged for storage. It's not a huge number, but it's kind of one of those things that could sneak up on you over time. So my suggestion would be to set this, but it's up to you. Okay, so that's all we need at that point. Simple one. And we know that that is going to be referred to down here. So we're going to go log group 0. And now here we know that it's an ARN based on my notes. I'm assuming that I read that right. So we'll say log group 0 dot ARN. Okay, so get the ARN attribute, the ARN attribute from log group 0. So let me just check this to make sure that that's actually what it wants. Go back over here. What was I looking for? EC2. And log destination. Yeah, okay. So if the log destination type is not specified, or you set it to CloudWatch logs, specify the Amazon resource name, the ARN of the CloudWatch log group. So we're good here because we didn't specify this. It defaults to CloudWatch logs, and we didn't set it to S3. So we know what we need here. So I think we're going to give this a whirl and see what it does. Okay, so let's go here. We'll add another validation step. So I'll say flow log validate and stage is validate. We'll just steal this. What do we call it? Flow logs. We've got this deployed already. I'm just going to take all of this and we'll say flow log deploy. I always forget to do this, so let's just do it right now. I keep going between plural and let's do this. So we got to change this name, right? Deploy flow log. Now we know that we have to provide the ID of the VPC, and I set it up so I'm going to show you this in the console, but we'll get a drop-down list of all the VPC IDs, but we do want to pass this in. So I'm going to say VPC ID, and we'll go back over here. And we're just going to go here, and we want that, right? That'd be a bit of a pain to type, right? So we're going to do that, and we're going to call this flow log environment here, flow log. All this stays the same. Now we have to do a parameter override. VPC ID equals, okay, just like that. And we also need something else. We need capabilities. I'll come back to why we need this. Capabilities is capability IAM, I think it is. We'll check in the docs, okay? Let's go have a look at that now, and then I'll explain why we need it. There was, I thought it was in this document, it mentions it. It was in one of these docs that we were looking at. Might have been in the IAM stuff, so let's find that. Oh, there it is. Okay. If you specify a name, you must specify this, which we know we don't need, but we still need to provide capabilities. Let's look at that link. I can never remember the structure of this, so let's just check. So here's what we want. Based on my previous spelling, let's just cut and paste. And we don't need capability named IAM because we're not actually naming any of the IAM resources. We're letting Cloudformation do that for us. So we just need this. So let's just, again, make sure that that's good. The profile stays the same. And this is our setup after, right? Wait for the stack and then set up update termination on it. So let's just double check this to make sure this is up here. All right, let's try this. Okay. All right, so we got an error in the validation. Resource log group. Every resource object must contain a type member. Oh, you know, yeah, that's a silly one. I didn't set the type. I'm totally guessing. So we're going to go check. Here. Find CloudWatch logs. Let's see how close I was. Logs, log group. Okay, makes sense. All right, so that's a simple fix. Let's see how we did this time. Oh, hey, Gold Zulu. I didn't see you join, man. Thanks for hanging out with me for a bit. I got to figure out this chat thing because I'm looking over here and the chat window's over here, so I never look across. I need one of those. Oh, were you here earlier? Yeah, I need one of those. What did Jeff call it the other day? A confidence screen. So I could put this screen behind my main screen, and that way I could just kind of look past and see the chat window rather than having to look over here. There we go. A reason to buy some technology. That's never a bad thing, right? It is Prime Days here too, so I could maybe find myself a cost-effective confidence screen. Yeah, you know what? I should do that, but I've got it the Mac streaming through a capture card on the PC. So this screen, right? That one is my PC, and then I'm looking at my Mac over here. So I don't know how I would pop it. Anyways, I'm sure there's a better way to do it than how I'm doing it. It's a good idea to just drag it over, maybe, eh? All right, so let's see what happened here, if this worked or not. Still failed. Okay, so what else do we have wrong? Unrecognized resource type, EC2 flow. What did I do wrong? I am wrong. Obviously, that's a typo, so let's go have a look. Oh, flow log. Okay. All right, there we go. So validated, fine. We really shouldn't see anything happen here, so it should pop through here pretty quickly. And then we'll see it deploying the flow log. So there we go. So that means if we go back over here and refresh this, there's our flow log for our development environment. Just like we did before, generates a change set. We can go in here and see what we're going to add. So there's our policy, our role, the actual flow log, which is responsible for capturing the data, and then the log group. And you can see here the input. There's the VPC ID that we hard coded into the CI script. So let's run this and see what it does. Okay. I will try that. That's a good suggestion. Value of property policy document must be an object. What was that in? Flow log policy. So that's up here. What did I forget? Let's just check the syntax of that. Oh, sorry, it's Iam again, so we're going to go down here. It's a managed policy, and we're creating a policy document. I bet you I missed a statement. Yeah, see what I need here? Yeah. Cut and pasted, didn't do it right. So we need version 2012 1017, and then we need statement, and this should go like this. All right, so let's just double check that again. Version, statement, and then an indent. Version, statement, and indent. Okay. So that means we've got to blow up this. So that should disappear pretty quickly. There we go. All right. So we'll go back now. Yeah, we'll just leave it the same. Always fixing typos. How was did you stream today? Gold Zulu? You working on like some hackathons right now or anything like that? I know that Giorgio's working on a couple things, right? I don't know if he said he submitted or not. Oh, you just did a short stream today, yeah? Hackathon stuff? You still building a skill out or something? Oh, you got to change your streaming time because you keep getting interrupted by Justin, right? You like to watch him. You adjust your streaming, so you can't be in two places at once, right? All right, let's see what this does. Oh, I see. Okay, syntax errors. Oh man. Okay. So we've got probably just a spacing issue again. So still flow log policy. Let's go back and have another look. Oh, yeah. Put plural on a word that doesn't need plural. So it's just action. So let's delete that again. Make sure this gets cleaned up here. Okay, it was quick. Try it again. I think that's the only thing here. Let's just go back and look. Yeah, action, resource. We don't have conditions or anything, so I think we're fine. Yet another typo. Oh wow. Was that the drive you were talking about the other day that you ordered or were thinking about ordering? I have a memory of this conversation, but not a good one. Yeah, okay. How much work effort was it to actually get it set up? Because I know you said that it can be a little bit of a pain. Is it working? You got it all set up and ready to go? Oh yeah, I can imagine. Ah, there we go. Okay, that's better. So we got our log group. Let's go have a look at that. So if we go over to CloudWatch logs, go to log groups. There's our log group, and you can see this random character string on the end. This is the part that CloudFormation is just creating for us, right? So that's when, remember I said we're going to let CloudFormation name it for us. We've got our retention period and some other things that don't matter right now. Okay. Oh, I put the vest mount up down, broke the screw to the mount. Oh, okay. Yeah, nice. I'm actually looking for, I need like a little mounting bracket or something for an iPad. And then I want to put that iPad on a screen in my workout area, so I can, watch streams or something like that while I'm trying to lose some of the quarantine 15 that I've ended up with, just not not a lot of activity. So I need to find a little mount or like a clamp bracket or something like that. I had another failure. Resource not found, resource ID, expected type number, found string. Oh, okay. So close. So let's not delete this quite yet. Flow log, right here. Maybe it doesn't like that. Let's go back and have a look. Oh, hold on. What did I do here? Mac, was that the right place? Let me just check. I'm looking at the right error. Flow log 0, maximum aggregation interval, found a string. When the network is attached to a Nitro-based instance, which we're actually going to do, the aggregation is always 60. Okay, so then we're going to use Nitro anyways for this, so why bother having that then? So let's just clean that out. We're going to go back here and delete this failure one last time, and hopefully we'll get this to come to life. Oh, I know, man. This is why like we write all this stuff for our customers ahead of time, because we would deploy all this in our development environments and get all these bugs worked out first and then deploy. But yeah, this is my life, just constantly going back and forth between the documentation, test it, and see what happens. I joke with the other folks in the team that I think a lot of times this is just a sheer battle of wills. Who has the patience to keep working at this? Can you outlast the errors, or will you get to a point where you're like, oh, I got to go do something else? Most times I think that's all it is. Oh, did you? You did a course? Yeah. I'm actually thinking of turning this into like a course that you could download all the modules or something like that. I was kind of toying with that idea the other day. I like the idea of a broken module though, right? And then you have to actually do the troubleshooting to kind of figure it out. That'd be kind of cool. It's the best way to learn, right? Yeah, it's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. Right now I'm posting this on YouTube, but I kind of thought that what I could do is, for the actual course content, have some slides that go along with it, kind of explain the concepts, have diagrams and things like that I don't do here, just to kind of go into the details and, well, more detail. What do you mean when you say Twitch needs to be cleaned up before YouTube? You mean all these errors and stuff like that? Validation not found. Or do you just mean some editing? Resource type not found. What did I do here? Resource expected type found JSON array. Oh, you know what? I can't. I'm getting fancy here. This won't work because it's passing. Yeah, we have to just put in a single item here. So I got to go back and find that different parameter type. Oh, yeah. I don't know how you could actually edit out this conversation, because it's kind of like flows right in for the class for sure. For YouTube, I really don't care a whole lot. It's more just creating the content than anything for now. This is what I want. Okay, so we're actually, oh, I guess I could have just gotten rid of the list. Let's try it like this. Maybe that's what we need. Not sure if I deleted it or not. For the idea of a course, absolutely. All right. I don't want you to sit here and watch me edit CloudFormation templates for hours, because that would be kind of horrific, I think. So like all these templates that I'm building here, we basically already have in a giant repo that we use. But I thought for doing Twitch broadcasts and things like that, it's kind of good to walk through it and see how it's done. Yeah, I'm actually seeing that myself, like on the YouTube channel. We have like really short little how to do this, how to do that. Those things actually get viewed. These longer streams where I just dump this into an hour and a half long video, people will watch them for 4 minutes and they disappear. So I think you're right. They're kind of going for very specific content and that's it, right? Yeah, I agree. Okay, didn't fail immediately, so that's a good sign. There we go. The policy's there. Let's see what happens with this role. Usually if it doesn't immediately fail, we're good. Role is completed. Oh, man. Required key, resource type not found. I thought we checked that we didn't need that. Resource. Oh, I missed this. We looked at resource ID, didn't look at resource type. The type of resource for which to create it. For example, if you specified VPC ID, then we have to specify VPC. Okay, so go back here. And CloudFormation. Right. Okay. Man. Is not a valid format. So we're not passing the ARN information here correctly somewhere. Flow log 0. Oh, yeah, I used a ref instead of a get attribute. So that's just got to be ARN. Okay, so we should see this one pop in here pretty quick. I pushed it? Yeah, okay, pushed it. There we go. right, there we go. 82nd time's a charm. So now, if we go over here and refresh, there's our log group. We won't have anything in it now because there's actually nothing that should be generating traffic here, but it's set up and it's running. Okay. What's interesting here is, see this KMS. So this is key management service. So we can encrypt this, but unfortunately, if we look at the log group definition right now, so if we go back here, log group, log stream, we created a log group. Right now, it doesn't support directly KMS. So if you wanted to ensure that these logs were encrypted at rest, what you could do is have like we would normally call it like a supporting script or something like that. Maybe a simple Python script, or even a bash script or a CLI script or something like that you could run against this log group to encrypt it with a KMS ID. We might come back to that later and show you how to do that. Okay, but the log group is here, so we're good. What I want to do now is, I thought we could finish, if we go back and check the cheat sheet here, set up some VPC endpoints for the SSM service, so all that communication stays within the VPC. So let's just quickly, we can close that, we can close that. Yeah, I don't want to do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're essentially going to set up VPC endpoints for our session manager. Okay, I think this is what we want here. Yeah, okay. So what we end up having to do here is create connections to these different service endpoints to provide us with the ability to create that private communication. That's essentially what we're doing. Okay. The alternative to using VPC endpoint is to enable outbound internet access for your managed instances. I thought, just as an example of what you might do here, we're going to keep that within the VPC itself. There's 3 buckets. CloudWatch logs. All right, so this is what we want here. Now, there's a number of services that exist within SSM. So you can see here, follow the steps for creating an interface for the following endpoints. SSM, that's the main service. Make calls to the SSM agent. We're going to need that. If you're using Systems Manager to create VSS-enabled snapshots, I don't know if we need that. We want to use Session Manager, so we need this. Creating a gateway endpoint. We should probably add this at some point so that logs go to S3 from SSM, but I think for the time being, we'll worry about these particular pieces right here. So let's have a look at this doc. So we need to create an endpoint. I was hoping for here, basically how to set this up. Well, we can probably look. Let's do this. AWS. Okay. So we're not going to put a policy doc. We're just going to use the default policy that allows full access to the service. We're going to not use private DNS. We're just going to use the DNS that is set up. So that's fine. Our route table IDs, we don't need this because we're not creating a gateway endpoint. We're creating an interface endpoint. So we do need security groups. The service name, so that's where the list came in, like EC2, SSM. We're going to need that. And then the ID of one or more subnets in which to create the endpoint. The type of endpoint. The VPC ID. Okay. So let's go back here. Yeah, we'll go like this. Well, we know within the parameters, we're most likely going to need these. So we're going to grab those now and just drop them in here. I remember seeing VPC ID, so we'll do the same thing. We'll set this type the same way we did here. And we also needed subnets. So I'm going to say private subnet 0. And we'll say private subnet 1. Okay, we'll come back to those. Those are the only things that jumped out at me right away. So let's leave it at those for now. And we'll go down here now and get the endpoints set. So if we go back to here, these are the services. So we're going to do SSM, EC2, messages, and SSM messages for now. I think based on this reading, that's what we probably need. Okay, so we'll go SSM, EC2 messages, and SSM messages. So these are the different service endpoints we want to create. We're not going to worry about S3 for now. Maybe we'll add that later. Okay, so I'm going to call this VPC Endpoint 0. Let's go back over here. Okay, so EC2 VPC Endpoint. Like I mentioned, we're not going to worry about policy document. We're not going to worry about that. We need our route table IDs. We don't actually need route table IDs, sorry, because we're not creating a gateway endpoint. We're creating an interface endpoint. So here's something else we need to create. So security group IDs, and we'll add to do. This is the service name. What is this? It's just a string. So we're going to use sub here. And if we go back, I'm going to leave that just in case I want it for something. See this? That's what we want to do. So let's grab this. We want to sub this out. And I think, if I recall, it's just like that. I don't know if that's going to work. We'll have to check. We're using here a pseudo parameter. So this way, we're just going to, when we execute this, if this syntax is correct, we'll double check. It'll substitute in the region where we're executing this stack. So in my case, the Canadian region. Okay, so if we go like this, AWS Cloudformation, this will show us the structure of the intrinsic function. Yeah, right there. So I've got that. They're showing it in single quotes. Most times I don't use quotes anywhere when I'm creating these, so I'm going to try it like that and see what happens. We'll let it throw an error. Will it do anything different? Nah, let's try it like this and see what it does. Okay, so that's our service name. Our subnet IDs. And here we can say ref, we called it private subnet 0 and private subnet 1. The VPC endpoint type, it defaults to gateway. We don't want that. So we'll set it to interface. And then we need the VPC ID, which is that. Okay. Does it support tags? Doesn't look like it supports tags. Oh, look, there's the sub right there. Now they're showing it in quotes again. I'm going to try it and see what it does. We're going to leave these for now because essentially these are all going to be the same. We're just going to change out the service name. Okay, so we're going to try one and see what happens. But we do need a security group. Okay, so we're just going to call this endpoint SG0. And before we start writing anything, we'll add the depends on here. So let's have a look at what we need. A group description is required. So we'll just call this we'll let it name itself. We don't need egress. Do we need egress? I want to say we don't need egress. So let's do security group ingress. And in here, we got to set this up. Let's check what we need. I think there was a definition here somewhere. I want to say that we have to allow 443. Let's do a quick search. There we go. In this case, managed instances must allow outbound traffic to the following endpoints. Well, we're going to allow all outbound traffic. So that's fine. That's the default of a security group, right? Block all inbound traffic, allow all outbound traffic. So let's do this. Security group for we're back here. Here we go. If you created a new security group, on the inbound, add a rule HTTPS from your own CIDR range. Must allow inbound traffic on port 443. If you created a new, okay, so now there is a value that we can get. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go VPC CIDR. And we said this, right? Okay, so ingress, we can go back here now. And we can get what we need for the security group. So the CIDR. Not sure if I did that uppercase or, okay, there we go, camel case. Do we need a description? Well, we've got the general description, so we'll leave it at that. We're going to say from port 443 to port 443. IP protocol is TCP. We don't need the source prefix or the source security group, the name, the ID, to port we have already. So I think we're good. So what we can do now is add tags here. Not sure why that's bouncing at me. Oops. There we go. So we'll steal tags off of here again. Owner, and we'll just call this and down here we can say ref. Okay. So I'm going to deploy this and just see what it does. We need the VPC ID. We need both of these, which we can grab from the VPC console. We want the 2 private subnets. So just grab these. Okay, that means we've got to add in here. I don't know what I called them in here. Okay, private subnet 0, private subnet 1. So we'll do this. All right. We don't need IAM capabilities anymore, so that's good. All we need to do now is look at these two. I want the parameter types again. And I've got no to do. So let's push this and see what happens. Oh, I did what I always say I do. That's not following what I did earlier, right? Let's do this. Okay, we validated. These should go pretty quickly. And we can go back over here. Oh, you know what I did? I didn't change this. So this is SSM endpoint. The stack name I got, I just didn't change the actual file. So let's do that again. All right. There's our security group, and there's our first endpoint. Security group ID. I think it's supposed to be plural because we can have multiple security groups assigned to this. Security group IDs. What do I need to do? Yeah, there we go. So this to me, that error means that the output from this, we're expecting an ID. This must be a name. So there's a different reference. Let's go have a look. I want EC2 security group. So what we want to look for here is the output. So the return references a logical ID. So that's right. So that means in our endpoint, security group IDs. Okay, so I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to comment that out for the time being, because this will at least let us get that security group deployed. And that way we don't have to deploy the entire stack each time. We can just make some changes. So removed. Push that. This will also let us see the output. All right, so that's that. There's the resource that gets created. Physical ID. We don't have any outputs set, so that's fine. So EC2 security group. This is expecting the ID of one or more security groups. Okay, that's fine. Field is required when the endpoint is an interface, which we have. And we already looked here, when we pass a ref, we get the logical ID of the resource. Group ID, VPC ID. Oh, hang on, here we go. The group ID returns. I don't know if I'm just misreading that, but let's try this. Because if we look here, this is expecting the group ID. Okay, well, let's try it. So that means down here, and I want to say it was just .group ID. Yeah, group ID. Well, let's try it. So as long as we type this right, not security group. No, because see, it's asking us for the unique identifier of the security group. So if we look here, right, if we go down and look, the ID of one or more security groups, and the error it threw was basically saying, I'm expecting to see SG something. So yeah, I'm a little confused in the way that's worded, but let's see what it does here. We deploy this change set. So we're going to just basically add another endpoint. Yeah, okay. All security groups must be in the same network. Oh, when we created the VPC, the subnet, not the subnet, sorry, the security group, we missed something here. Without this, it's actually deploying that in. If we go over here and we look at VPCs and we do a filter on our VPC and we go to security groups, we only have the default one. What's happened is because I didn't put the VPC ID in, it put it in the default VPC. And now we've got a VPC endpoint in VPC A, and we're referring to the security group, which is in VPC B. So that's not going to work. With this, that should fix that. But let's just check to make sure that's the only thing we need to change. Yeah, there's the VPC ID. We forgot that. I don't think we need egress. We need ingress. We've got tags. Let's try it and see. Okay, so what we should see in here is another change set get generated. And when this comes up, we're going to see a modification of that security group, and it probably will delete the security group and recreate it. And then we'll have our SSM come to life as well. There we go. So changes, we're going to modify the existing endpoint security group, but we have to replace it because we're changing the VPC. So that's fine. Assuming this goes well, then we should add this. Let's see what happens. Okay, so, right, hence creating a new one. There's that. Didn't immediately fail. That's a good sign. So if we go open this in a new tab, go back to the VPC service, and we filter here, there's our endpoint, and it's still coming to life. Oops, I want to go here. So actually, while we're waiting, you can see here the VPC ID, or sorry, the endpoint ID in the VPC. It's type. There's the VPC. There's the service. It gets a DNS name assigned to it. Okay, a bunch of DNS names. It exists. These endpoints exist in the two private subnets. There's the security group that's associated with it. We're not setting up any notifications. And I didn't see tag support. So let's check that. Let's refresh this and see what happens. Still creating. No tag support there. Owner email, environment. I'm surprised those didn't populate down. So it must not support tagging through CloudFormation at this point. There's another example of where you might need like a helper script or something to do that work after the fact. Because we really do want everything tagged. Maybe the tags will pop in here when it finishes running, but yeah, it's available. Yeah, there we go. So there's our first endpoint. What we need now is, this is where it's in theory easy. We can take this, make that endpoint service or endpoint, the logical name endpoint 1, make this logical name endpoint 2, and then we just need to change the services we're talking to. I don't think yeah, here we go. So we want this. Which is going to go right here. I don't think that's the right. Let's just double check. I think those are backwards compared to what we did earlier. Yeah, here we go. SSM we created. We need this. That's going to go here. And we're going to change this to put our pseudo parameter back in. I don't think we need this, so we were just going to do this one for now. All right, so let's see here. There's our change set, so we should see the two other endpoints. Huh. Oh, I think it's supposed to be messages. Was it messages? Messages. Single versus plural all night tonight. Even cut and paste can't save me. Hoping I didn't push that change too quickly, because see this, it's still saying it's in cleanup phase, so we might actually get an error in our pipeline saying that it can't push because the state's bad. Yeah, okay, there we go. So we just have to wait for this to finish. Do you have any other streams to watch tonight, Goldzula, or are you done? I know, it's got to be late where you are. Oh man, I don't know how you do it. It's basically 8:30 here, right? So I'm 5 hours behind you, and I'm already kind of wiped out. I taught a class today, so I always find all day talking, 8 hour class, and then streaming after. I get wiped out. Let's run this again. I'm going to blame my typos on classes. Yeah, I teach AWS classes. Yeah. I'm teaching the developing on AWS class today. We do a little bit of both. So most of the stuff that we do is like private stuff. I'm thinking for the public stuff, what I mentioned earlier on, like maybe building this into a course or creating a VPC or something like that into a course, and then just, you know, $30 or something like that. You download all the content and you can build it out. Maybe give you the Cloudformation and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know Udemy or LinkedIn. I'm actually thinking of maybe just like on Gumroad or something like that. It's kind of what my thought was, or maybe even like create a simple Spotify store or something like that. Oh, you're going to do Alexa ones? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Trying to keep it like really discreet, just to maybe like, you know, creating your first VPC, creating that first web-based workload, those types of things. Yeah, we do AWS consulting. So mostly we do technology work for people, like building accounts and, you know, deploying services, kind of like what we're doing here. But another thing that I spend a fair amount of my time doing is training. It's really how the business started about almost 5 years ago, was with training. Well, this didn't fail, so I'm going to expect to see in here, yeah, there's our other interface endpoints coming up, and they'll look very similar as far as the subnets they're in, all going to use the same security group. We don't have any notifications set. So this is, I think, just a little bit of wait and see to make sure that it pops up, and I think we're good. There we go. So these guys should be marked available now. Okay. Now, this really doesn't mean anything right now, but we usually like to set this type of stuff up. So VPC flow logs, SSM, or not, I shouldn't say SSM, but any VPC endpoints that we need for services before actually dumping anything into these. So next week, we'll maybe look at actually getting the first machine image built and stuff like that. But I think at this point, we're done for tonight. If I go to VPC, let's see if we've got any flow logs. I don't know if those endpoints will generate flow logs or not. Where do I want to go? VPC. There's our flow log. If we just click here, it'll take us over to CloudWatch logs. There we go. So these are the interfaces that we've created. We basically have two interfaces for each of the services, each of those endpoints, right? So 2, 4, 6. We would have interfaces for the NAT gateways. Flow logs is where we are capturing all the traffic flowing in or flowing out of a VPC. And actually, I should be careful when I say capture, because we're not seeing any of the detail, like the packet detail. But I mentioned earlier that what we end up getting is just a single line. And this is all no data, because it's, I don't know why it's doing that, to be honest. Let's see if we can find something new. The important part here is that now I could use this to troubleshoot security groups or network access control lists, because most times, you know, EC2 instances trying to talk to another EC2 instance, it's either a security group or a NACL that's stopping that traffic flow. So in here, we could see that rejected traffic really quickly. Yeah, it's a traffic log. That's a good way to think about it. Okay. I think all of this is good. Oh, there we go. Hey, look at that. So this is accepted traffic. I would suspect, we'll look it up, but I would suspect that this IP is probably one of our NAC gateways. Okay. Yeah, you can see denies, you can see accepted, rejected, or all traffic. I've got it set up to show us all traffic, accepted and rejected. So what's this IP? 3214. If we jump back over here, no. Oh yeah, 3214. We're looking at the VPC IP address. So we're seeing traffic, external traffic flowing into this NAC gateway. I think it was in. source destination, source port, destination port. So to me, this looks like the internet doing its normal thing, right? Is it all hitting 14? Yeah, it looks like it's all hitting 14. Well, that's the, sorry, of course it's all 14 because that's the interface I'm looking at. That's 14 again. Yeah, this is probably the other one. So we're seeing that same traffic hit the other NAT gateway. All right, so I think that's we're going to call it a night. Thanks again, Gold Zulu, for hanging out with me. It's nice to have somebody here, so I'm not talking to myself. Trying to build up the viewership still, so got a long way to go. So thanks, man, for hanging out. I'll probably see you tomorrow on Discord. Get some sleep. Stop thinking about echo skills and go get some sleep. Yeah, man. Thanks. I'll catch you later. Bye.